You already understand people better than you realize. You've been reading the signs your entire life. You just didn't know you were doing it. That feeling when someone's smile doesn't match their eyes? That sense that someone's confidence feels forced? That intuition that tells you someone is hiding something? You're not imagining it. You're seeing through their masks. Friedrich Nietzsche spent decades studying this exact phenomenon. He discovered that every human being wears not one, but 7 distinct masks. And once you learn to identify them, you'll never see people the same way again. But here's what will shock you. These masks aren't just survival mechanisms. They're bridges to understanding the deepest parts of the human soul. Each one whispers the story of what broke someone, what they fear most, what they're desperately trying to prove or protect. As Nietzsche said, invisible threads are the strongest ties. These masks are the threads we weave to survive, but they also connect us to each other's hidden humanity. This isn't some surface-level psychology trick. This is a complete transformation in how you see human nature. Because by the end, you won't just see through everyone else's disguises, you'll understand that these masks are bridges, not walls, and that understanding, that's where real power lives. Part 1. The Survival Masks. Walk into any room, any workplace, any social gathering, and you're surrounded by people wearing invisible armor. Personas forged in the fires of early wounds, designed not to deceive, but to survive the brutal mathematics of human interaction. From childhood, we learn that our authentic selves aren't always safe, so we create versions that are. These survival masks aren't evil, they're evolutionary brilliance. But here's what Nietzsche understood that most people miss. These masks have tells. They leak truth like cracked vessels, constantly betraying the very secrets they're meant to protect. Once you know what to look for, you'll see them everywhere. Mask number 1, the virtue mask. You encounter this person constantly. They're the moral authority in every conversation, the first to point out what's right and wrong, the one who volunteers their good deeds without being asked. I would never do that. I can't believe people think that's okay. I always try to do the right thing. But here's what Nietzsche discovered through years of observing human nature. Excessive virtue signaling often masks deep, consuming shame. The person broadcasting their morality isn't confident in their goodness. They're terrified you'll discover the darkness they're convinced lives inside them. They wear righteousness like armor, because underneath, they're drowning in the belief that they're fundamentally flawed, irredeemably broken, secretly terrible. Every public display of virtue is an unconscious attempt to balance the scales, to prove to the world and themselves that they're worthy of love and acceptance. Watch for the contradictions that reveal the truth. They judge others harshly for mistakes they've made themselves. They bring up their volunteer work in casual conversation as if building a legal case for their worth. They get disproportionately angry, really angry, when their character is questioned, even slightly. That anger? It's not righteous indignation, it's panic, raw, primal panic. Because if they're not the good one, the pure one, the moral one, then who are they? The virtue mask cracks when they're caught in hypocrisy, when their past mistakes surface, or when someone challenges their moral authority without backing down. Suddenly, all that performed goodness evaporates, and you see the terrified person underneath. What to do? Don't call them out on their hypocrisy. It will only trigger more performance. Instead, notice the person beneath, someone who's likely carrying guilt or shame they can't face. Offer acceptance instead of more judgment. Show them that being flawed doesn't make them worthless. Mask number 2, the strength mask. This person never complains, never shows weakness, never asks for help. They're the rock everyone leans on, the problem solver, the one who has it all together when everyone else is falling apart. I'm fine. I can handle it. Don't worry about me. I've got this. But Nietzsche saw through this performance immediately. He understood that compulsive strength isn't about being naturally resilient. It's about controlling how others see you when you feel utterly powerless inside. They learned early, often through painful experience, that vulnerability meant danger, Maybe crying brought punishment. Maybe asking for help brought rejection or shame. Maybe they were forced into a caretaker role too young and learned that other people's needs always came before their own. So they became islands, self-sufficient, unshakable, unreachable. They built walls so high that even they forgot what's behind them. But watch their body language when others get emotional. Notice how they shift uncomfortably during vulnerable conversations, how their jaw tightens when someone cries. See how they immediately pivot to solutions when someone shares pain rather than simply listening and holding space. The strength mask is exhausting to maintain because it requires constant vigilance. They can never truly relax, never fully let their guard down, never allow themselves to be human in the messy, imperfect way that humans actually are. This mask cracks under sustained intimacy. When someone tries to get truly close, to see behind the competence and capability, they'll either push that person away with coldness or create enough drama to maintain safe emotional distance. What to do? Don't try to force them to be vulnerable. It will trigger their defense systems. Instead, model that vulnerability is safe around you. Share your own challenges and uncertainties without expecting reciprocation. Show them through your actions that needing help doesn't make someone weak. Mask number 3, the indifference mask. I don't care what anyone thinks. It doesn't matter to me. Whatever happens, I'm over it. Here's the profound irony that Nietzsche would have immediately recognized: the person who constantly tells you they don't care. They care more intensely, more deeply, more painfully than almost anyone else around them. The indifference mask is worn by people who cared too much and got burned, who invested emotionally and faced rejection, betrayal, or abandonment so devastating that they decided never to risk that level of pain again. So they swung to the opposite extreme, performing not caring as protection against future heartbreak. But indifference is impossible to maintain perfectly. Look for the behavioral contradictions that reveal the truth. They claim they don't care about social approval, but they monitor every reaction, every facial expression. They say they're over their ex, but somehow that ex appears in every other story they tell. They act like criticism bounces off them, but you can see them processing every word days later. They perform casualness about things that clearly matter to them. They shrug off compliments they desperately want to hear. They dismiss opportunities they're secretly hoping for. The indifference mask slips in moments of genuine threat to something they care about. When their job is threatened, when a relationship they've been pretending doesn't matter faces ending, suddenly all that practiced detachment evaporates, and you see the person who feels everything deeply but learned that caring publicly meant getting hurt. What to do? Don't buy into their indifference. Don't treat them as if they actually don't care about anything. Pay attention to what they do, not what they say. Show them through your consistency that caring might be safe again. Think about someone you know who wears this mask. Can you see past their performance to their protection? The person claiming they don't care about anything usually cares about everything so deeply it physically hurts. If you're starting to recognize these patterns in others or maybe even in yourself, hit that subscribe button. Because what we're uncovering here isn't just interesting psychology, it's life-changing insight. If you're feeling that uncomfortable recognition, that means this content is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's waking you up to truths that can transform how you connect with everyone around you. So subscribe, because we're just getting started. Part 2. The Power Masks. These masks don't just hide weakness, they weaponize insecurity so skillfully that they fool therapists, best friends, even spouses. They don't look like weakness disguised, they look like strength incarnate. But Nietzsche understood something that cuts through all pretense. The most convincing masks are forged by those most terrified of being overwhelmed by their own sense of inadequacy. The person who appears most powerful is often the one most terrified of powerlessness. Mask number 4. The Confidence Mask. Confidence attracts us like moths to flame. We're drawn to people who seem certain, assured, unshakable in their convictions. But Nietzsche made a crucial distinction. There's authentic confidence, and there's performed confidence. The confidence mask is worn by people who are desperately, frantically afraid of appearing inadequate, stupid, incompetent, or wrong. So they overperform certainty about everything, creating an illusion of unshakable self-assurance. Here's how to identify it. They never admit ignorance about anything, ever. Ask them about quantum physics, ancient history, or obscure poetry, and they'll find a way to sound knowledgeable. They dominate conversations, steering topics toward their expertise. They name-drop constantly, as if borrowing credibility from others' accomplishments. Most tellingly, they become defensive over minor challenges. Correct them about a small fact, and watch their entire energy shift. What should be a simple, "Oh, thanks for the correction," becomes a complex dance of justification or counterattack. Real confidence is paradoxically quiet. It can say, "I don't know," without shame, without feeling like those 3 words threaten its entire foundation. It can be wrong without experiencing existential crisis. But the confidence mask is loud, aggressive, and utterly exhausting to maintain. Because underneath all that performed certainty is a person who learned early that being wrong meant being worthless, that uncertainty meant weakness. Often the person behind this mask grew up in an environment where mistakes were punished harshly, where parents only praised perfect grades, where peers mocked intellectual vulnerability. So they created a version of themselves that's never wrong, never uncertain, never at risk of looking foolish. What to do? Don't challenge their expertise directly. It will only trigger more aggressive performance. Instead, model intellectual humility. Share your own uncertainties and mistakes without drama. Show them that being wrong doesn't make you worthless, that admitting ignorance can actually be wisdom. Mask number 5. The control mask. Control appears to be the ultimate strength. The person who manages every detail, anticipates every problem, micromanages every situation. They seem so capable, so reliable, so impressively on top of everything. But Nietzsche saw deeper than the surface performance. He understood that the compulsive need to control everything external reveals the terror that nothing internal is controllable, that chaos lurks just beneath the surface of their carefully managed world. You'll recognize this mask in the person who can't handle spontaneous plans, who needs detailed itineraries for simple activities, who gets genuinely anxious when others make decisions that affect them, who micromanages not out of natural leadership but out of fear that anything left unmanaged will spiral into catastrophe. They're not controlling because they're naturally dominant personalities. They're controlling because they're terrified. Terrified that if they relax their grip for even a moment, everything will collapse into the chaos they feel churning inside them. Watch them during genuinely unpredictable events. Illness, economic changes, relationship shifts. Anything they cannot anticipate or manage reveals the frightened person underneath who's been holding on so tightly their hands are permanently clenched. The control mask often develops in childhood chaos. Maybe they grew up with addicted parents and learned that managing the environment was the only way to feel safe. Maybe they experienced trauma that taught them the world is dangerous unless carefully monitored. Behind this mask is often someone with deep anxiety, someone who experiences the world as threatening and unpredictable. Their need to control everything is actually a form of self-medication, a way of managing internal distress. What to do? Don't force spontaneity on them or criticize their need for control. It will only increase their anxiety. Instead, recognize that their micromanaging comes from fear, not arrogance. When possible, give them advance notice about changes. Help them feel safe in small manageable doses of uncertainty. Part 3. The Desperate Masks. These final masks serve a different, more desperate purpose entirely. They're responses to what Nietzsche called the abyss, the terrifying possibility that we are insignificant specks in a vast, indifferent cosmos, that we don't matter in any ultimate sense, that we're forgettable, replaceable, doomed to live and die without leaving any meaningful mark. These masks are our fragile shields against existential terror, their attempts to answer, "Am I enough?" without ever having to risk hearing, "No." Mask number 6, the performance mask. You see this mask everywhere now. It's the person who always has the most interesting story, the most dramatic problem, the most exciting news. It's the individual who can't exist quietly, who needs to be the center of attention, who performs their entire life as if it's a show requiring constant applause. The performance mask goes beyond occasional attention-seeking. It's a complete lifestyle, a way of being that turns every moment into potential content, every experience into a story that might impress others, every aspect of life into raw material for the ongoing production of "look at me." But here's the tragic irony that Nietzsche would have immediately recognized. The performance mask is worn by people who believe their authentic self isn't enough to keep people interested. So they create a more dramatic, more successful, more colorful version of themselves, hoping this enhanced edition will finally earn the love and attention they crave. The more they perform, the more isolated they become, because people are responding to the mask, not to them. And deep down, in the quiet moments when the performance stops, they know it. They know that if the drama ended, if the constant updates ceased, if they just existed quietly and ordinarily, people might lose interest and drift away. Watch for the exhaustion behind the performance. The person wearing this mask is tired, bone deep, soul tired, because maintaining a false identity is energy-depleting work that never ends. Behind this mask is often someone with a naturally sensitive, introspective nature who learned early that quiet contemplation doesn't get rewarded, that ordinary experiences don't get celebrated, that being simply human isn't enough to earn love and attention. What to do? Don't feed the performance by only responding to their dramatic moments, but don't ignore the person either. Pay attention to the quiet moments, the unguarded expressions. Show genuine interest in their ordinary experiences, not just their highlighted ones. Help them discover that they're inherently interesting without the show. Mask number 7. The logic mask. This is perhaps the most sophisticated mask of all, and the hardest to detect because it looks so much like wisdom, intelligence, and emotional maturity. The person wearing it appears rational, objective, above the messy world of emotions and subjective experiences. But Nietzsche saw through this performance immediately. He understood that pure objectivity is impossible for humans, that behind every logical argument, every rational analysis, every factual statement lies an emotional reality that's being carefully hidden or denied. The logic mask is worn by people who learned that emotions are dangerous territory. Maybe they were punished for crying as children, told that feelings are weakness. Maybe they grew up in emotional chaos and learned that thinking was safer than feeling. Maybe their emotions were consistently dismissed or used against them, so they retreated into the apparent safety of their analytical minds. They've become experts at intellectualizing everything, turning emotional experiences into abstract concepts they can analyze from a safe distance. They can debate ideas for hours with passionate intensity, but ask them how they feel about something, really feel, not think, and watch them become uncomfortable, deflecting back to facts and logic. Behind this mask is often someone with an incredibly rich emotional life that they've learned to distrust and suppress. They may be highly empathetic people who found their sensitivity overwhelming, so they developed intellectual frameworks to manage and distance themselves from their own feelings. The logic mask cracks when faced with undeniable emotional pain that can't be analyzed away, theirs or others. When someone they care about is hurting and logic can't fix it. When they experience loss that can't be reasoned away. What to do? Don't force emotional conversations or try to break down their logical defenses. Instead, acknowledge their intelligence while gently pointing out emotional realities they might be missing. Help them see that feelings aren't the enemy of logic, they're additional information. Here's the profound irony. The person who retreats into pure logic is often feeling so much that it threatens to overwhelm them. Their objectivity is actually the most subjective thing about them, a desperate attempt to survive their own overwhelming sensitivity. Now you know all 7 masks. You can walk into any room and see the performances, the fears, the desperate attempts to be accepted while staying safely hidden from genuine intimacy. But something else is happening as you read this, isn't it? A recognition that goes deeper than intellectual understanding, an uncomfortable familiarity that's making you shift in your seat, Which of these masks felt most familiar as you read about them? Which description made you uncomfortable? Which one made you think, how do they know about that? That discomfort? That recognition? That's the sound of a mirror turning toward you. The truth that Nietzsche understood, that you're beginning to feel in your bones, is this: we all wear masks. Not because we're deceptive manipulators, but because we're vulnerable humans trying to survive in a world that often punishes authenticity, that rewards performance over truth. But here's his gift to you. Once you see the masks, on others and yourself, you can choose. You can choose when to wear them and when to set them aside. You can choose which parts of your performance serve you and which parts have become prisons. When you truly understand masks, not just intellectually, but in your bones, something profound and irreversible shifts in how you move through the world. You stop taking other people's behavior personally because you see the wound behind the weapon. When someone wearing the virtue mask judges you harshly, you don't get defensive. You recognize their shame and perhaps offer acceptance. When someone with the strength mask won't accept your help, you don't feel rejected. You see their terror of vulnerability. When the indifferent person dismisses something you care about, you don't believe their performance. You understand their protection mechanism. When the confident person dominates a conversation, you don't feel intimidated. You see their insecurity. When the controlling person micromanages everything, you don't get frustrated. You recognize their anxiety. When the performer creates drama, you don't get caught up in their show. You see their loneliness and pay attention to their quiet moments. When the logical person dismisses emotions, you don't feel invalidated. You understand their disconnection from their own emotional life. This is what Nietzsche meant by seeing beyond good and evil. You begin to see people not as heroes or villains, but as fellow humans wearing the masks they needed to survive their particular wounds. And that recognition doesn't make you weak or naive, it makes you unshakable. Because when you understand the game everyone is playing, you can't be manipulated by the players. You can't be triggered by their masks because you know they're not really about you. But perhaps most importantly, you can begin the slow, careful, courageous work of removing your own masks. Not all at once, that would be overwhelming, but gradually, strategically, with people who've proven themselves trustworthy. You can risk showing your imperfections, admitting you don't have all the answers, asking for help, admitting that you care deeply, saying "I don't know," allowing some spontaneity, existing quietly, acknowledging your feelings. This isn't just about becoming more authentic, it's about becoming free. Free from the exhausting performance that drains your energy. Free from the constant fear of being discovered. Free from the profound loneliness of being loved for who you're pretending to be instead of who you actually are. So let me ask you directly, which mask has been your prison? Which one have you been wearing so long you forgot it wasn't your real face? What would it feel like to be seen, really seen, for who you are underneath all the protection and performance? This is your choice moment. You can close this and return to surface-level interactions, pretending you don't see what you now see. Or you can step into the depth, the messiness, the terrifying beauty of real human connection. What small step could you take today to put one mask aside? Don't just think about it intellectually. Feel it in your body. Because this isn't academic knowledge. This is transformational truth. And transformation requires action, not just understanding. What part of your true self are you starving because of these protections? What relationships are you keeping shallow because you're afraid to remove the mask? Imagine the freedom waiting beyond the performance. What would you risk to reach it? I want to hear from you in the comments. Which mask hit closest to home? Which one made you uncomfortable because you recognized yourself in it? Or maybe you recognized someone important in your life, a family member, friend or partner, and now you understand them in a completely new way. Share your insights below, because this isn't just about watching content, it's about transformation. And if this video opened your eyes to the hidden dynamics in your relationships, you need to watch the next video. Trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next.